Welcome to this episode of Safety Shorts. This is number 12, and in today's episode we will sit down and look at the safety data sheets, specifically section 4, where it talks about first aid measures. This Safety Short is brought to you by the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast and Applied Safety and Environmental Management. Let's get started. So when we look at a safety data sheet, there's the standard 16 section format that's probably been in place since about 2003. We all kind of know it pretty good, but let's just kind of do just a little bit of a recap here of section 4. Then it's going to talk about initial care that should be given by the untrained responder. So that's really the key there is the untrained responder out there. What are you going to do immediately as somebody else has called 911 waiting for professional help to arrive then? So it's going to talk about the first aid instructions, and it also kind of goes into the route of exposure. What do you do if it's you breathed it in? What do you do for skin and eye contact if you've somehow ingested this chemical? So it really kind of goes into what the untrained person is going to do. Let's go on to the next slide here. It's going to talk about your important symptoms. And is it going to be acute or delayed? Is it going to be something that you know right from the get-go? Or is it delayed? It kind of takes some time to do its thing. And like all things, we don't want to wait and see what's going to happen. We always want to take action, handle it as quick as we possibly can, and don't just have the attitude of, well, you got acid on your arm, and when it really starts to hurt a lot, we'll take action from that. You want to get that person going right from the get-go, get all the things in place, the 911, the grabbing of the SDS sheet to make sure that you're going to truly understand exactly what's on there. I work at a couple of places, and there's probably 300 and something different SDS sheets out there. Nobody can understand and know exactly what every single one has on it for a first aid step. So you always got to have that sheet in front of you. And whether it's by a paper copy, you have a service, you get on the internet, whatever form or fashion that you've chosen. Me, I like the good old-fashioned paper copy. I'm a little bit older than most folks out there, so that good old-fashioned paper copy, because then I can take it, I can go right to where the issue is, as opposed to I pulled it up on a computer, I got to read it and understand it, and then kind of enact what it says. Let's go to the next slide here. So it's going to talk about recommendations for immediate care and anything special. We'll cover a couple of the special treatment things in the next couple slides. Let's look at the first one here, our first example that we'll go with, because we could just talk, but let's just really pull up a good example here. So in this first one, the chemical is acetone, common solvent found out in industry. A lot of different places are going to use it for different things, and people know pretty much what that smell is as you take off nail polish. So I just know that smell from others around me with nail polish. But let's look at what we're going to do if this comes in contact with us then. So on the first one, let's say that for the sake of argument, it gets on our skin then. So we're going to wash it off with plenty of water for at least 15 minutes. If the irritation persists, call a doctor then. So you're working at a industrial plant, and somehow there's been, let's just say that there's been a leak in a line, and you've got a small spray onto your bicep area then. So you're just going to wash off the skin with plenty of water, all that good stuff for this first one. And we're not going to sit down and cover every single one, word by word. Let's look at a couple of the symptoms and effects a little farther down on the same slide then. So symptoms of overexposure, maybe headache, dizziness, tiredness, nausea, vomiting. Besides the vomiting and nausea, a lot of us are kind of tired at work, and at times, depending on if you have hay hay fever, the flu, COVID, or anything else. You could have a headache too. So sometimes the common things that we experience in everyday life are also the things that are a sign and a symptom out there of overexposure. So that's the first one for acetone. So let's go on to the next practical example here. Hydrofluoric acid. This is one of my favorite ones here. Only for the point that hydrofluoric acid, unlike I should say most acids, you don't truly get that burn right from the get-go. It kind of feels warm. It kind of feels a little uncomfortable. You're not really sure if it got you. But one of the awful things it does is that it's trying to seek out calcium. Now it's not smart enough to know where your body is and purposely go for that calcium. But when you think about your calcium, you have your bones, you have calcium in your blood to help your heart and everything else. Then when you kind of think about other, like your fingernails have a lot of calcium on it too then. So this is one that we're going to take a special precaution on. And I know it's a little bit small here, but what we're going to do is we're going to look at on the bottom here when it talks about using iced benzo. It's really easy for somebody else to say. Benzoconium chloride at 0.13%. So I know that a lot of places are going to use calcium gluconate, which is, pretty much the same thing, and it has a lot of calcium in there. So because HF is trying to bind with that calcium, it does a great job of binding with that gluconate then, and so it does a really good job of taking care of the issue. But like all things with HF, because it's such a awful thing, always send down the person for follow-up medical treatment then, because you might think that you got it, but you're not really sure. Also with this one, it's one of the very few chemicals that you just don't wash for 15 minutes in a safety shower and call it good. You're only going to do 5 in a safety shower so that you can get that gluconate on as quick as you possibly can. A little bit more on hydrofluoric acid then. So here's the spot where it talks about treatment at the very bottom here then for calcium gluconate, But one of the things that we already talked a little bit about then is the symptoms. Symptoms may be delayed. So if you have any doubt that you got this on your skin, you've got to take action as quick as you possibly can then on this one. Let's go on to the next slide here. Nitrogen gas, another very common gas found out there in industry. Colorless, odorless, you can't really detect it. You can't really, if you're in a bulk a bulk place where nitrogen is found, it'll be a gigantic tank always in the outside, because if there is a leak, it won't cause a oxygen deficient atmosphere. So let's go ahead and look at and in this one here, they made it very short and very right to the point then. So let's talk about skin contact with this one. Wash exposed skin with soap and water. One of the things also with nitrogen gas is that for the most part, when it comes out, it's reasonably cold. If it's going from a liquid to a gas, the liquid's about minus 300 degrees Fahrenheit then. And so when it goes to a gas, not only is it expanding rapidly, most of the time causing a very dense white cloud, but it can also get on you then. So so one of the other big things, of course, is that because you can't see it, you can't smell it, you have to think about if you're going to inhale it. Now, of course, nitrogen is about 78% of the everyday air that we breathe, but when we talk about nitrogen gas, we really mean it's 100% in this this case here then. So you should think about giving oxygen if breathing is difficult, and at all times get medical attention if you breathe this in then. So let's go on to our next practical example here. One that we commonly find out in industry is gasoline. if you're working at a place that's doing any form of trucking, any form of construction, you're going to find the gasoline. Of course, you can obviously find it as you're fueling up your automobile. So it is something that's very, very common out there. A lot of places are going to have generators, and of course, if somebody takes a gallon or a 5-gallon can and fills up the generator too, so there's a lot of different ways, and ways that we may not think as a common way of getting this gasoline on the stent. So I'm not going to go word by word bore everybody, but let's look at ingestion then. So if you were ever going to ingest this somehow by accident, then. So one of the big things on here, it says, do not induce vomiting. Do not give liquids, and then it kind of goes into the rest of the stuff. It caused damage going down, so you don't want the person to vomit to cause that damage again as it's coming back out and vomiting. Now, of course, obviously, if there's spontaneous vomiting, you lean the person forward. You make sure that they can't choke on their own vomit and that kind of stuff, but you purposely don't make them vomit in this case then. So let's look at eyes then. Okay, so if you somehow got gasoline in your eyes, you're going to flush the eyes for 15 minutes, and when you flush your eyes out, you almost always have to hold your eyes open. I've done a lot of drills out there where I've said, oh, I have something in my eye, let's see how the people respond, and of course, I've set this up, with others, but your eyeball does not like anything to touch it. So even in the case where I would just put my face into an eye wash, then I still had to physically hold my eye open to have that water really get in there then. So yeah, your eyeball does not like anything to come in contact with it then. So, and that's going to be a couple of our practical examples. So today in Safety Short 12, we talked about Section 4, First Aid Measures. We went over a couple of practical examples also. One of the key things that I'd like to go back and harp on, of course, is when you bring a new chemical on board, make sure that you're really reading and understanding that there's not anything that causes a special treatment, just like the HF, the calcium gluconate then. Make sure that you're ready to respond, and of course, actually hold the drill. I know that management typically finds those really uncomfortable because you'll see where people think they're going to respond great, and sometimes they don't respond great. That's it for episode 12, Safety Short 12. I want to thank the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast for sponsoring this, also Applied Safety Management. And thank you so much, and have a safe day.